Welcome back, everyone, to the Built4Anything Podcast. I'm your host, Hertz, and in this episode, I will be sitting down with Brittany Bullock. Now, Brittany is a 9-to-5er. She's a blogger. She's an event planner, and most importantly, she's a really, really cool person. And in this episode, I think a lot of you guys will be able to relate to it because we get deep. We get very deep in this podcast. We talk about the realities, the fears of getting older from a woman's perspective. We also talk about balancing your social life along with your work life, right? We also talk about her relationship with her father and her parents and how that was kind of rocky growing up for her and how that's kind of made her into a stronger person today. So if you guys take anything from this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It really, really does help the show. And also consider signing up to my Patreon that I just set up. You will get some exclusive benefits. One of many is that you'll be able to see podcasts like this before it hits YouTube. So I appreciate all those that are part of the Patreon group. Shout out to you guys. And without further ado, Brittany Bullock. Enjoy the show, guys. Welcome to the Built4Anything Podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are.
Okay, so this is always the hardest part. So I'm Brittany. I am originally from Indiana, moved here by way of Chicago. I've been here for almost 3 years. By day, I work in human capital management, so I deal with HR infrastructure strategy, helping businesses maximize ROI around their employees. And then the rest of the time, I kind of have my hands in a few things. So I run my own blog that's dedicated to helping people balance kind of 9 to life and catching flights and everything we do in between that as young millennials, and then work on a couple different things for Cosign Magazine and some other Dallas brands.
9 to life. I like that catchphrase.
I did myself.
At first, usually when you hear anything 9 to life or anything, you think prison term, right?
Yeah, it's fair. It's real fair.
I want you to explain, clearly, you know, it's a play on 9 to 5, right? But I want you to kind of explain a little bit deeper, like, where does that concept come? Where did it come from? What does it mean to you?
So I kept seeing things kind of just people focusing on, 9 to 5 and 5 to 9. But for a lot of us, it really doesn't stop at 9, and it doesn't, really have that breaking point where it's so separate. A lot of our lives kind of roll over to everything. So just because a lot of people I know, like myself, like are still in corporate America, still having side projects, hustles, volunteers, it's kind of those things where it's like, hey, it's just not about that 9 to 5 and that 5 to 9. It's really about 9 to life. So it's about everything you do during the day, even when you're off work, even when you're traveling PTO or whatever. So I kind of just took that same kind of concept, but made it my own in a way.
So how frequently do you blog? Is that like a once a week thing, every day? How frequently do you?
It's about twice a month. Okay. I kind of try to drop tips and gems and everything on social media, but it's kind of one of those things, right, too, because I do have a full-time job and then I do have other projects, other things, but I do try like to at least have a post twice a month. I'm trying to do once every week.
Girl, we gotta get you writing, girl.
I know, that's on my
all this technology.
I know, but
phone.
I have so many notes in my phone of like things like, I gotta write this idea, but I'm also one of those people that I just do it when it feels right. Again, I drop like things on social media, on Instagram, like if I've been to an event or if I've been somewhere, like tips and other things. I feel like if it's something, this is dope, I need it in somebody's hands now. Or there's been instances like it's 2 a.m. and I'm like, I've got to get this out off my chest, or something that's happened when, what was it, Yahoo a couple of years ago. Do you remember the nigger Navy thing? Mm-mm. So they had made a tweet that Trump was looking for it's supposed to be bigger Navy, but someone messed up and put the N instead of the B. Mm-hmm. And I had stayed up on Twitter like until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning reading everything because I was like so just glued because, Black Twitter we're funny. Mm-hmm. So by like 4 a.m. I'd already wrote something and was like, hey, here it is. But just because I was that entranced with it. And then there's some things that, taking me longer to write and taking me like 6 months just because I'm like, I keep going back and changing it, or like, is it right? Is it ready? So, you know, it is something I'm trying to get more consistent at, but you know, life.
So what I thought about it when I first hear that term, I think about balance, right? Because most people, we usually lean more towards one direction or the other, right? So when I think of 9 to life, I think of work, social life balance, right? And how when you do too much of one, it can be bad, right? Like if you just somebody who just works all the time and don't go out, don't meet people, don't socialize, that could be bad for you. Or the flip side, you could be somebody who's always at every single club, every single party, and is just all over the place and not have their personal life really, really in order. So how do you balance like the two?
I think for me, it takes a lot of discipline, and it just takes it kind of focus and realizing there's certain things I want to do and not want to do. I can be one of those people who overcommit myself to things and say, I can do that. Yep, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And I had to learn that it's just physically impossible. So I'm a planner by nature. Like I look at my week, look at my schedule, and really try to be realistic with myself because, you know, I'm human. And I tell people all the time, like, you can be human, but you don't have to be superhuman, right? To take your breaks, to, you know, spend the time by yourself, have me days, have all of that. So I think for me, is I have to take a hard look at every day and say, okay, what are my things that are high priority that I have to get done today? And then what are the things that I'm like, okay, if I don't get them done today, then it's okay. And I think it just comes with, oh, y'all have black glue in here. So I swear his apartment's clean, I promise. But having to understand kind of, you know, everything's just not going to get done. But also being responsible enough to say like, hey guys, I can't brunch today because I have 30 things I have to do, or I can't, you know, yeah, I would love to come to your event, but listen, I got 30 events already during the beginning of the week, or really not 30, but maybe like 2. And I still have a full-time job, and then I still have other things I need to do. It's just not going to happen. So I think balance is really about willing to also like sacrifice at the same time, to understand that you can't do everything. So
how do you catch yourself when you feel like, man, I'm doing a little bit too much of one over or the other? Like, what are some of the things or signs that you look for where you're just like if you're listening, we have this one fly in here, guys, that is just like, he or she's just very obsessed with Brittany.
Right. I swear I showered today.
It must be the color, man.
Yeah,
it must be.
I legit showered, so it's.
We're gonna get through it. Well, like I was saying, are there signs, are there things that you kind of look out for where you're like, all right, look, I'm partying a little bit too much, or I'm working a little bit too hard? You know what I mean? Like, are there any things that people around you that kind of hold you accountable, or things that you do to just kind of like make sure you don't go overboard? Like how you mentioned you overcommit. Like, do you just make sure like, look, I'm just going to go out 3 times this month instead of 10? You know, like, are there things like that you put in place? Yeah.
So I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of solid people in my circle. I talk to my Chicago friends like every single day. And we actually start early in the morning because we do devotionals together. And we start off every Monday saying, hey, what are our goals this week? And how can we help each other accomplish them and keep them accountable? So we have midweek check-ins where I'm fortunate because we're just all kind of career driven, and we all have side hustles and projects, you know, and it's not just we're working 9 to 5. Like, you know, there's people who are assistant VPs and over finance and, you know, senior partners, like all these dope things. So it's kind of because my friends are so dope, like I have no choice but to say, okay, you're going to be the bum out the group. What you going to do? Like,
you got to bring something to the table.
Yeah. I have to bring something to the table. And, you know, like, it's like, hey, do I want to go to KFC or do I want to be Popeyes? Like, it's just 2 different things. So that was a really bad analogy, but you know, I'm hungry.
I got you.
I'm hungry. Sorry. Popeye sounds kind of fire. But outside of them, then, you know, I just have a genuinely good support system here. So my friends will check in on me and say, hey, you've been doing a lot. What are you doing? Okay, bet, stay in the house. Like, and I also hold them accountable as well. But I think with my body and my being, it'll catch me before I catch myself. Like, there's been days when my body is just like, hey, we're not doing this today. Like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I have all these great plans. And my body's like, LOL, you're funny, but no. Like, you're sitting down. Or I've sat down and had something to do and woke up and I'm like, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm clearly not making it anywhere. Because for me, it's really, I've gotten to that point, like, I really don't even like clubs and going out. Like, I'll go to the bar every once in a while, like, you know, like a Sunday fun day, maybe hit a day party, but it's really rare. Most of my time, like, my friends do have to catch me from working or going to events, or I'm behind the scenes in events. You know, it's, again, this kind of come back to that balance, because I'll have those days where turn off the phone, I'm not taking a laptop nowhere, I'm not doing anything. It's, you know, time that I'm like, I need to just enjoy my life because this is the only one that I have. See, there goes that damn fly again. But, you know, for me, it's really, like, I'm blessed, bro. Like, my friends they're just dope.
It's funny you mentioned, like, leaving your phone at home. Isn't that such a difficult thing to do nowadays? It feels like we're so attached to our cell phones, like, how freeing it is to actually be able to leave your phone at home and go out for the day or spend time with your friends. Like people don't really do that much anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't leave it at home for the whole day. So I'll go and do things by myself and leave my phone. But it's like, I'm not that far from home, or it's just like, oh, I'm only gonna be gone for like an hour or two. You know, it's like, whatever it is, it's gonna wait. But we're attached to our phones. Like, everything, our phones are our lives. Like, especially I got like 6 different email boxes on my phone. Like, my Google Drive, like, files, everything. It's kind of hard. Cause even I have to put my phone in other rooms to sleep some nights. I'm like, okay, if I know I don't, then I'm going to get up and check my email, or I'm going to get up and look at something that has nothing to do with anything I'm working on. Like, I'm just going to get up and Google, like, what size shoe did Jesus wear? Like, things that make no sense. But I'm just like, I'm up, and if it's on my mind. So, you know, because one of the jobs... in the
information age, that's for sure.
We like information, and by nature, I'm just, wow. Okay, this fly hates me. I don't know what it is. It really hates me. I'm just an inquisitive person, period. So I'm always looking at stuff. Like, I watch documentaries all the time. I'm just always like reading, just wanting to learn knowledge. So if it's something that I like spark, like, oh, I wonder if I can do this, or I want to learn something, it's like I just get attached to it. And even there was a certain point in the job that I had before the one I have now, I was working in international business. So it was 24 time zones. And I slept with my laptop, my iPad, and 2 phones in my bed, because at any time anything had happened and I'd be ready to go. So now it's like, I've had to break that habit of myself to say, no, like, put your phone across the room, take all your computers out, like, take everything out. And it's just now that I put a TV in my room. Like, I used to not even sleep with a TV in my room just to force me, like, to be away from technology.
Yeah, I don't keep a TV in my room either, because it's like you said, you're gonna always, if you have a TV everywhere you go, TV's in the living room, TV's in the bedroom, you're on your iPad when you're in the bathroom, you're just constantly around all kinds of technology. It's hard to be productive, right? And you realize how much time you actually put towards it. You have a milestone that's coming up soon, right? And I want you to talk about it, because I found it kind of funny, because not just women, but just like people in general, I find like when they reach that certain age, and it's up to you if you want to disclose what that age is, but it's coming up, and I wanted you to talk about like how that could feel very daunting to people, or even to yourself. Like, why is that like...
I wish you could just zoom in to look at my face right now. Can you see this? Like, you see this? Yeah, so I'm about to be 30 in a couple weeks. Yes. Yeah, I wish I had balloons or some glitter or shit so I can throw it. I think just as a person, I think 30 is kind of like that point you're just like, fuck, I'm about to be an adult. Like, you just feel like, fast. Shit. Like, right, I've been on this earth for 30 years. And then you start thinking like, okay, am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? Am I accomplished? Like, how I'm supposed to be accomplished? Like, yo, there's people who are 25 and millionaires. Like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing wrong? Where did I go? And it's kind of all these thoughts. And when I turned 29, I was like, yes, like it's 29. It's my last year in my 20s. Like it's about to be lit. And then I was fine for months. And I think it was like at least when it started to be 6 months. So it was May 8th. And I was like, oh, my friends were like, yo, your birthday's in 6 months. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like 6 months is a long time. And then I realized I was like, wait, that means it was just November 6 months ago. And it's happened so quickly.
Yeah,
and
time flies.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what I've been doing for 6 months. Like, physically, I sat down on my floor and I had a nervous breakdown. And thank God for my friend Imani. She's one of my Chicago friends. And she's one of the type of people that she'll kind of baby you and support you when you need it. But she's also that like, all right, bitch, we're not doing this today. Like, stop. And she kind of talked me through that because I was like, yo, whatever, like everything just seemed, I'm just like, nothing made sense. Right? I was like, bro, are my nail colors even right today? Like, should I be wearing this like when I'm, about to turn 30? Like, what the hell is like going on?
You start really critiquing yourself and
every single thing about yourself. Like, because you're looking, I mean, comparison, we know, like, and I don't care who says they don't compare themselves to somebody else or doesn't look at somebody like, oh, I should have that life. We all have a habit of doing in some way or some form. It might not be physically, it might be mentally, it might be spiritually, it might be something someone has. It might just be a thought or something like somebody's created, like, damn, I wish I could have did this, wish I could have did. We all do it in some places. And I think I was looking at like, yo, like there's all these people around me that are doing such amazing things. And am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I walking in what my purpose is? Am I sure what my purpose is? And it was just kind of that day. It's like, all right, well, we got 6 months to figure this out. Like, cause you got legit, not that much time until you're like, okay. So I was like, I'm just going to live the rest of my days in literally my last year of my 20s. Sounds so crazy. And just being like, hey, this is a pivotal point, and just trying to celebrate that and taking it in, because it is daunting, and it's one of those things that you're just like, what happens next?
And that's the funny thing, because we don't know, and we don't even. I find that when we think too hard about the future, we lose sight of what's going on right now. And really, the main thing that we have is the moment. It's right now, right? Like nothing's guaranteed beyond this moment, beyond today, right? But it's funny how much we put like pressure on ourselves to be somewhere or to achieve something at a certain time. Like, is there really a big difference between 22 and 21? No, not necessarily. But is there a bigger difference between 25 and 20?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, now you have a couple of years under your belt. And so I think when we do appraise ourselves, we should look at it from a bigger body of time as opposed to year over year. It could be, all right, I'm 30 now. Where was I when I was 25? Am I better? Am I worse? I'm a lot better. All right. So then you start looking ahead and saying, all right, at 35, I want to be, hopefully I'm, whatever your goals are. And then you just take each year, 1 year at a time, as opposed to saying, all right, at 31 or at 32, I didn't do much in a year. Because a year goes by so quick. Like you said, your birthday's today, and then students tomorrow comes. Before you know, you're 6 months after it, and it's like, okay, your birthday turns around again. It happens so fast, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I just think that, these big ages, especially, again, because we have so much put in our face about, people like, oh, I've been building in silent success, and I'm good at this and I'm good at that. Like, it's theirs. So sometimes it's okay to feel like we're average as hell sometimes. Like, we're not on all the time, or like, hey, yeah, maybe I could be further if I would have made some perfect steps, but I have to like constantly remind myself, like, nope, you're exactly where God put you at and where you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be behind. You're not supposed to be further. So it's just that kind of like always like that constant battle. And now that it's down to, the last few weeks,
do you think it has more to do with like women's biological clock that they have in their mind versus, for example, like most men, we probably don't really think much of 30 versus 25 or 30 versus 35 or even 40 versus 30, right? When you look at some of the more accomplished people in this world, right? Most of them have started to achieve their business or whatever, usually around 40s, believe it or not. Usually it's way later, not in their 20s or their teens for the most part. So do you think more of like that pressure that comes for women, like, is it that like, man, I got to get certain things done, like whether it's I got to get married at a certain age or if it's I got to have kids at a certain time? Like, do you think it's more, does the pressure come more from that, or is it coming from what you should be accomplishing work-wise or some other factors?
So I think that it's so broad that it really depends on the person, right? And there's all these different ways to look at life, and not all women want to be married, and then not all women want to have children. So it's, you know, if you're 30 and you're like, hey, that's not the life for me, but I have pressures from, because I'm trying to be a VP by the time I'm 33 and I'm trying to retire by the time I'm 50. You know, it's like, so you have that pressure from a work and like economic standpoint. And then maybe you are somebody who said, okay, well, I want to be married by 27. I'm now 29 and I don't even have nobody who's going to text me back. Like, you know, it could be in that situation. So I think it's a very situational thing. I don't like to put blanket statements on what all women want or what all men want or what all people want, just because everybody cares about certain things. Like, you know, some people are like, yo, I don't want to have kids before a certain time in my life because I want to travel and there's other things that I want to do. Or, hey, I might be getting married at 30, but I still don't want to have kids until I'm 35. Like, it just depends on that person. But I do think, you know, usually when I'll go to meetings or I'll be meeting with clients, I'm like, oh, you're 30, like, so you're not married? No. Okay. So do you have kids?
There's that stigma. No. I mean, it's the stigma's there, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. There's like, you know, you might have your mom that's like, girl, where's the grandkids come? Like, it's going to come from somewhere, right? Where people just expect that, okay, this is the age where you're supposed to get things started. And if you don't, or not even have the desire to, that still that pressure is there though, where it's just in the back of your mind, like, am I supposed to care so much about it? Maybe more than I actually do. And then you kind of put yourself in that frame of mind where it's like, shit, then I guess I ain't really accomplished much, or I'm not doing as well.
I think some people equate success to being married and having kids. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And if you see fit, like, you're like, hey, this is success to me. Like, I can make as much money, I can do as many things, but that's what I want. That's fine. But for me personally, that's not what I equate it to. And I think I was getting ready to turn 29, and that was the first time my dad ever told me he wanted grandkids. And I was like, you want what? And he was like, yeah, just when are you thinking you're actually going to slow down because you're doing all these things? Like, you don't have time. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're almost 30. It's like, so? Like whatever. And then the other day, my grandma was asking me, she's like, so do you know, what are you thinking about kids, or what are you thinking about this? You know, just make sure, you know, I don't want you to be by yourself. And I'm like, sis, I'm like, I have friends. Like, I'm good. Like, I have animals. Like, I have a dog. Well, my dad has my dog, so that's not actually fair. But it's still like, I have things I have to do. And I think sometimes our grandparents and our parents, because that was what they were raised on, like, hey, you're supposed to, especially
back in the day.
Yeah, you're supposed to get by this age, you need to be married. By this age, you need to have kids, and you need to do X, Y, Z. Where I'm like, I'm the second oldest cousin in my family, but I'm the only person that doesn't have kids. So my cousin that's older than me, she has 3 kids, and then right below me, it's like kids. And I'm like, I don't want that life right now. Like, that's not for me. Like, not knocking them, but for me, I know that's not what I need. Like, I don't have kids' money. Like, they're expensive. My friend is pregnant right now, and she was saying, like, daycare was like $2,500 a month. And I was like, where?
Funny thing about kids, you never really prepared, right? It's just one of those things. I don't have any kids, but it's from what I hear, from what I see, it's like you're never really prepared. But once they get here, then it's like, I don't know, switch goes off, or it's just like, shit, man, I got to just find a way, right? And it's usually a lot more. It takes a lot more than you anticipated. No matter how much money you might have saved up or whatever you had planned, it's like stuff happens, life happens. Something's going to happen where it's just, damn, that wasn't part of the plan. You know what I mean? And you got to adjust. And so it's just one of those things where I guess, you know, you deal with it when it comes type of thing.
I wish we had that Zoom again so I can just like, hey, I am not ready. Like my niece came to visit me a couple weeks ago and she's 21 and I was like, did you check in with your mom? Like, I can't believe I was like, okay, I didn't kill you today. Like, it was like,
yeah, trust me, I got a nephew that's getting up there in age and it's just, I tell my sister like, man, I don't know how you do it. You know, it's funny. We bring up like pets, dogs and things, but it's like a human being. Yeah. That can be rough, especially nowadays, especially today, right? Where there's so much going on that you have to work even harder to like maintain any type of household or just something functional. It's just, there's so much distractions. You know, kids they got cell phones at young ages. They're on iPads at super young ages. They go to school, they learn about things we knew nothing, not to the degree of, at early ages. And so they're a bit more advanced in it. And if you don't kind of filter some of that information that they're getting, it could be dangerous,
right?
You know, to them. So yeah, definitely. I mean, hey, no pressure for me, no pressure for me. But because you bring up the 30, and I know a lot of people like that's usually where their mind drifts towards, like, shit, I didn't do that. So it's like, you know, life is just, it's moving too fast for me or whatever. But I definitely understand you. I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you know, when you mentioned about like the side hustle and social life, like what are some of the side hustles or things that you got going on aside from work?
So outside of work, clearly my blog, but then I also do, see, there goes that fly again, y'all. I'm telling you, this fly is on me. I don't know why. But so outside of my corporate job, of course, I do kind of event consulting for people and as well as trips. So I do events, trips, and everything lit. That's what I call it because
everything lit. That's okay.
Events, trips, and everything. We know I like these little phrases clearly. Yeah. So I found myself every time I was going on vacation or somewhere with my friends that it was always, I was like, okay, well, I'll find everything for us to do. I'll find the event. I'll find the restaurants. I'll find what's popping. I'll find the boat. I'll find all these things. And I was always like, I would stand at the airport as they were checking in and hand them itineraries. Like, here's your itinerary. Here's everybody's flight times. Here's all the numbers you need to go, like everything. I did everything people just didn't want to do and found myself enjoying it. And the more and more I kept doing it, people that I would be on trips with or that knew like, oh, I said you did my friend's itinerary, blah, blah, blah. Can you help me with mine? And it was one of those things where I was just doing it for people like, yeah, sure. Because it'll take me like 15, 20 minutes. I'll do it. Then realized, I actually need to get paid for this because, you know, even though some of these are like repetitive because it's like, oh, you're going to this country, but like I've done this for a few people, so I can just give it to you. But it was one of those things that just kind of fell in my lap. And then with the event side, a lot of people knew me from going to events and being at things. And my grandma, I spent a lot of time with my grandma when I was growing up. And it's the only Black kid in the neighborhood. So she felt safer when I was kind of under her rather than, you know, being in a neighbor's house or doing something. So she was president of all these boards, set on all this different stuff, like for nonprofits. So I would just always be with her going to these meetings and like planning galas and banquets and dinners and, you know, just sitting in the room, like soaking up knowledge and being at these events, seeing like what goes behind the scenes. And I'm still shy as a person, so I'm awkward on camera, y'all. I really am. But I was super introverted. I'm still an introvert, but I just always liked being at things because I liked the action of seeing things come together. So the more I started going to events, and then when I got to college and was, you know, PR chair for MPHC and like doing events for my chapter, and then when I graduated, you know, doing events for like different nonprofits, it was kind of one of those things like, yo, I'm constantly doing this. I constantly sit in events. Like I can go to an event and basically look at from start to finish and say, okay, where were the gaps in everything? Where could this have been tightened up or buttoned up? What was the experience that was missing? So the more people started reaching out to me like, hey, can you come to my event? Or, hey, can you give me some feedback? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I was like, yeah, but it comes with a price tag. Like, and I just like started telling people like, yeah, I'll send you an invoice if this is what you want. And they started paying it. So okay, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like, it's lit. Like, this is a thing.
Organizing an event is nothing to scoff at. You know, especially a successful event, right? Because a lot of things could go wrong. So, because I just think about weddings, right? Like I've been in wedding parties and just seeing how things just the
left.
day of it could do exactly. So I could just imagine like other things like charity events or whatever have you. I think that is a meaningful investment to have somebody who, if they can put things together, that's a skill. That's something, you know, that organizational thing is no easy feat.
Yeah, because it's not even, you know, for some people, like they'll come to me and say, hey, this is my idea, and this is maybe as simple as something as ironing out them and saying like, hey, this makes sense, this doesn't. Like you're trying to throw a $50,000 event on a $2,000 budget. Let's be realistic. That's not going to work. So, and then sometimes it's as simple as like, hey, you've already done everything and you just kind of want me to come and then, you know, have real live feedback from somebody that was in the audience. Because you can send out all these survey monkeys, all this, you send out 200. You're lucky if you get 50 back. Right. So it's kind of, I just found myself being able to sit and actually get real life feedback, what people were saying in the audience, or people were complaining about the food not being good, or it took them too long to check in, or they tried to check in with somebody and they were rude to them, parking sucked, they didn't like the speaker. Like I went to an event one time and one of the people that they had speaking, like she was younger than everybody in the crowd, and she was telling people it's okay to not have your life figured out as things. And when you're looking at a demographic of women that were around 30 to 35, you're going to take a 23-year-old telling you it's okay, you don't have life figured out, very different than someone who's your age. So kind of looking at all those things and saying, hey, you know, you have to pay attention. Who is your demographic? Do you even know? Like, why do you want that to be your demographic? So looking at everything again from start to finish and how people run that, it just kind of happened.
So what's the largest event you orchestrated or put together?
That's a good question, and I actually don't. They come and go. I actually don't have a number for that. Mm-hmm. Like right now,
are they mostly in Dallas, or are they usually in Indiana or Chicago?
Well, I mean, I'm here, so it's clearly easier for me to do everything here. Mm-hmm. You know, I will have like people from other cities like ask me questions or hit me up things or ask me, can I help with like their run and show, things like that. But lately, honestly, I've enjoyed doing like smaller, more intimate events, right? Okay. With the larger ones, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, like, right? There's a lot, you know, doing event walkthroughs and doing banquet and event orders and making sure like, hey, is the temperature in the room right? Or all these things, like you're doing tastings, making sure all the AV works. But, you know, I think a lot of companies right now, too, are moving towards those smaller, more exclusive events because that's what we like, right? We want that, like, kind of like exclusivity, like, oh, well, there are only 20 people invited to this event and you're not one of the 20, but I was. You know, that's what people love that, and like photo ops and those things. So I love working the smaller, fun events because right now I'm working on the Cosign Awards. So, and that's, you know, about a 300-person event. Okay. So that's something I have to work on every day.
What does that entail, Cosign Awards?
So Cosign Awards is Cosign Magazine's annual award show. Okay. And they basically kind of honor Dallas like tastemakers, influencers, entrepreneurs. So, and they're voted on by other people. So, and then the nominees, of course, get to come. So it's kind of like the Grammys for Dallas people. In a way.
Why do you know about this?
I don't know. You trying to come?
You gotta send me a link or something.
Right, bet. I got you.
Jeff know about this?
Yeah.
Jeff, you doing me wrong, Jeff. You messed me up, bro.
He fake. But no, like you can get a tux, slide through.
Okay.
So you know that's something that, you know, is like an everyday communication thing. You know, that's like me looking to say, hey, what does the sponsorship package look like? That is, what does, you know, let me do a taste. I got to taste everything on the menu to make sure it tastes right. I have to look at, okay, what are the vendor packages available? What is the room temperature going to be on? What is the table linens look like? Where is the AV situation? Where's the stage going to be like? That's like, there's emails that go on every day. I have to look at like, okay, so what are our balance sheets? What's the P&L? It doesn't stop. So that's taken up like a lot of my time. And then working on some other stuff. I'll send you the link for that too. I got you.
Look out.
So it's just one of those things that they just come and go, I think.
But do you think it's something that you would want to like turn into a business for yourself, or even if you, because I know you said you get some compensation for it now and you just kind of do it on and off, but like, do you think bigger scale, or like, is that something that you'd want to do more so than your current 9 to 5?
So remember when we were talking about balance and kind of things, one of that is mental health. I'm very aware of where I can and can't go stretch myself right now. My 9 to 5, for me at least, is I like it because it allows me to be creative, but in a different way, because it allows me to have strategic creativity, right? Where people will bring me things and say, I can't figure this out, or how is this going to impact their business? And I'm like, okay, I can whiteboard this entire thing for you and it'll make sense. I will lay it out. I will do all these things. My 5 to life, or 5 to whatever I'm done, you know, those are things I just truly enjoy and I'm passionate about. And I've had people ask me, am I going to leave corporate America anytime soon, just because I do so many other things? And I strongly believe that it's not for everybody, right? And we've kind of got forced in this corner of a lot where people say, oh, you're not really passionate about your side projects if you don't go full time. You're not a real hustler if you're not a full time entrepreneur.
It's not for everybody. I agree.
It's not for everybody. Like, I like the structure of corporate America, even though my job is really flexible, where it's okay, I don't have any meetings today, so I can work from home, or it might be 1:00 and I'm trying to go get lunch with my friend because I've done my meetings for the day, but I'm going to go back to the office at 4 and knock things out till 7, and then go to spin, and then at 8:00 go home, cook dinner, do laundry, do whatever. So for me, I just know that if there's not people that look like us sitting at the table, we can't complain about there not being seats there. So when I look around my office, I was the only woman of color. I was the only Black woman until last month for the past 2.5 years.
Wow.
So then when other girls in like other departments are getting hired and they're like, oh, you look like me, I need to talk to you because I'm struggling here. I can't do this. If I wasn't there, then who would they talk to? Same way, like, I don't have anyone to talk to that's higher up than me. So it's like, we have to be there in some capacity. Like, we have to have seats at the table. So if I have to fight every day people for that, like, no, you're going to listen to me. You're going to hear me out. These ideas, it's whatever it is. Because my team is nothing but men either. So it's my boss is a man, team is men, and it's just me. So it's one of those things that, you know, I'm not there by mistake. So I have to take that opportunity to really say, how can I not just progress myself, but if someone's coming up behind me, how can I help them too?
Yeah, you got to think about the people after you, for sure. And I know what that feeling is like, because it was interesting. Once I moved to Dallas, working at the job that I was working at, I found myself in a room and I was like the only African American, person in there, but to me, I'm not going to say I was shocked or anything like that, because I came from the total opposite, working in Brooklyn primarily. I've walked in rooms where it's only one, where it's the complete opposite.
Right.
And so that person could say the same thing. Like, I'm here and I'm just working with all, I'm not working with any Caucasians or anything. So I can't pretend or act like that's always the case, because I've seen the other side as well. But I think at the end of the day, right, you do take it as a responsibility. Like, okay, look, I got to make sure that I at least do my thing, because if I F this up, per se, the person after me who's looking for that same position, they may now look at him or her and just say, like, you know what? We tend to not have good experiences,
right.
You know what I mean, with people. So we find that the team is a lot closer when it's just this one demographic, or things get done when it's just, so it's almost like, okay, if you're gonna be there, right? My thing is like, hey, if I'm gonna be doing something, do it to the best of my ability, because don't mess it up for the next person. You see what I'm saying? So I definitely know where you're coming from, where it's just like, I gotta at least do my thing, and then somebody's looking at you like, oh, if she did it, if she's in the group, if she's managed to be in the office, then there is hope for me after all. I can get it. I can get there. So is that kind of like the pressure that you kind of feel like, I gotta make sure I do my thing?
Yeah. I mean, of course, like, I think is we can say as Black people, we've always heard you have to be twice as good to be half as recognized, right? And it's even when I had like braids in my hair and people in my office were kind of like, what are those? Like, because they actually hired me without physically seeing me. So all of my interviews were in Chicago, and the day they were supposed to kind of Skype in and see my interview, the technology was down, so I had to interview with the manager there. So none of the team, none of the people had actually like physically seen me. So when I showed up the first day, and they were kind of like, "You're Brittany?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, and Brittany's is a name that could go both ways.
Man, shout out to my dad for that one. He made sure it was resume ready. So when I had shown up or whatever, and then you kind of go those first couple days when your hair, well, for me, first couple weeks, my hair was like straight, everything, and then when I came with my natural hair, my boss at the time was like, "So how long is it staying like that?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "I don't understand what you did." I'm like, "I didn't do anything. This is my hair." She's like, "But that's not, so do you get up and straighten it every day? Like, what do you," and she had all these questions. I was like, "Have you never seen natural hair?" And she was like, "Oh, so when your hair's not straight, that's not really how it is." I was like, "No." And like having to explain these things or certain things like that people can't say, or like certain levels of comfortability, or, when we do sometimes deal with minority owned businesses, having to explain to people like, that's not the best route you're going to take with this business, or not the best way you speak with them. So again, it's, always having to feel like you have to be that advocate or that one voice. It does get tiring sometimes, but then I still remember, again, like this is an opportunity and it's not by mistake. And every situation that I get put in, even if it's a challenge, is for my betterment. Like we had, back in January, we had this new app that rolled out for work, and they were bringing it up on the screen, and I just happened to look up and I'm like, "Is that my picture? Like, do y'all have my picture? Like, y'all really got my picture up here on this national app?" I was like, "Okay, I bet." Like, just like, and then my pictures like in different places in the office and things like that. And I'm like, y'all are doing a lot, but it is what it is. If that means that they can look at me and say, "Hey, this is working out," so then we're gonna bring another one until there's teams with them on, that they'll give more people opportunities, then hey, I am what I am, but I can only do my part, and I don't expect for, them to kind of say, "Okay, great, we're going to just hire like droves of Black women because this works." Because again, like I work with men, so I can be aggressive at work and I clap back and I will tell them like, "No, I'm not doing this. This isn't working." Like they've seen it. Like one of my coworkers told me the other day, he was like, "We come to you when we want to figure things out, but we don't come to you when we don't feel like getting yelled at." And it's like, I don't even yell at you. Like I don't raise my voice, and they're like, "No, but you yell with your eyes." And I'm just like, if I say the same thing to them as somebody else might say to them, they'll take it a different way than when I say it. So having me be cognizant all the time of that, and having to, kind of check myself as well. But then I think they know me enough well now that it's like, I am who I am. Like, and I work hard. Like sometimes I might be in the office at 5 a.m. and, not leave until 6, 7 p.m. And then there's some days like I'm not going in until 10 because, I want to go get breakfast or was doing something. And then I might, leave at 6, 7, or I might come in at 7 and leave at 2. Like it just depends. But, at the end of the day, as long as I'm doing my part, it's all I can do.
We talked a little bit yesterday about a particular phrase that you have, and you told it to me in its entirety. I just mentioned it as just be, but you mentioned that what it really stands for, and I wanted you to talk about that because I think and no, it's I don't think you got it from Just Do It Nike, so it's your own thing. But explain, like, what does that really mean? Like to just be, to just, for you, that is like, what is that? Because I think that's hard for a lot of people to actually be themselves. Right.
At first, I had to think about what phrase you were talking about. I was like, I said a lot yesterday. Some of them that will not be on tape, so I have to recall what I said. So the tattoo, I actually have it on my side, and it says "Let It Be." And
let it be.
Yep. So all of my tattoos are around Bible verses or different like periods of my life or phrases. And I got that one kind of when I was just going through this transition period. I was 24, getting ready to turn 25. So which is another pivotal part where I'm like, shit, I'm an adult. Like, and then I figured out at 25, I was not an adult yet. I was lying to myself. But that's that part of the thing. I was 25. I was like, okay, now I for real got to grow up. Right. And I was unhappy. Like, I was in a job making good money, but I lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky. If you've never heard of it, never been there, there's not shit there. Western Kentucky University is there, but it's a college town. So everyone's either in school or married and older. And I had been trying to leave Kentucky for like a year. And I was applying to jobs in Atlanta, Miami, like everywhere, like jobs that made $28,000 a year. So I could just leave. And I was just like, I'll make it work. I don't care what it is. This is, I'll make something shake. And I got to the point where it just wasn't working. And sometimes I think again, this might be just me, but I think I can say, this is one thing I can say, like we all sometimes do, is we get in our own way. And I was just application after application, again, applying for things that I knew I would be unhappy in, but it was just more, I'm just unhappy here. I want to leave. And my pastor at the time that I had, like I was talking to him and he kind of knew what I was going through. And he's like, have you ever thought about just being still? And I was like, LOL, you're funny, but no. I was like, no, because I have to do my part. Like, the Bible says, faith without works is dead. So if I'm not filling out these applications, if I'm not following up, if I'm not doing this, and he was like, yeah, but do you think maybe that's part of the problem? That you're not taking it, because you're doing all these things like selfishly, and you're not giving God time to move on your behalf, because a lot of the times our blessings don't have to deal with us. They have to do about the things that are going on around us. And he has to move and shake. And it's like, hey, there might be 3 people in front of you that have to get blessed first in order to clear your path. So you have to be okay with that. And he's like, ask God for a time limit. I was like, I don't think you can ask God. Like, be like, hey, bro, like, so by this day, you're going to do this. I'm like, who am I to tell God that? What am I going to do? Like, build a stairway to heaven and be like, hey, bro, we need to talk? It's not how this works. And he was like, no, if you want something big, say, God, by this date, if this is what's supposed to happen, if it happens, then you did it. And if it doesn't happen, you did it either way, but I have to be content with it. So I had said, hey, by my 25th birthday, if I don't have a new job, if nothing's going on, I'm gonna stop applying. And so my 25th birthday rolled around, and I was like, all right, well, shit, like, you got it. So I just was like, I'm gonna be content. And, I was just like, whatever it is, like, I'm gonna stop complaining. I'm gonna stop like waking up every day like I don't want to do this shit no more. And I'm just gonna do my part. And that's what I did. And so right around that time, I also got on, it's the same pastor, he had me get on kind of like a over the phone prayer service. Okay. So, and then there's another pastor on there, and he didn't know me at all, never talked to me. And the first thing he said was, he was like, God, please bless those on the phone that need to learn how to let it be and be still. I was like, LOL, bet. Right when you needed it. Right. It was like, I literally like opened my eyes like, wow, y'all are playing. So I've had
moments like that where it just felt like, you talking to me? Like, or certain signs happen in the moment. You're like,
Right. So like, I even text my pastor on the side like, wow, I was like, you're funny.
Because you thought he...
Yeah. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, bro, did you tell this pastor? He's like, no, like, didn't tell him anything. So I'm sitting over here, bet, cool. All right, I see what's up. We're good. And so I was just chilling. Like, all right, I'm gonna stop, running down to Atlanta or like Chicago, like other places to see my friends all the time. Stop running home, and I'm just gonna sit. And in the meantime, I got this tattoo to always remind me, like, sometimes whatever it is, like, let it be. So whether it's myself, whether that's my situation, whether there's other things, like, I can only control my controllables, but stop getting in my own way. And sometimes I actually forget I have the tattoo, and then I have to remind myself, like, yo, look at your side, bro. Like, this is why you got this tatted on you, to remind yourself, like, to literally let it be. So whatever's going on, you've lived, you've survived, you've made it through worse. It's not the end of everything. So, and then, February rolled around. I actually, like, started applying for jobs again, but then got the oop to the company I was with in Chicago. Like 7 other people that were more experienced than me were applying for the job. I got the job, and I left in like, I want to say maybe like April. So it was like, from November to April, that's 6 months. Like, a lot can happen in 6 months, so it was just all things that work together literally for my betterment. And I can never fight that. I just had to get out of my own way and literally just let stuff just be where it is.
Sometimes we got to do that. And some people, they do that in the form of meditation. I think it's important for us to, again, we're so distracted by so many different things. cell phones, TV, computer. Like we're always in front of a screen, right? And then, like you said, when you got to get back to yourself, that might seem like you don't even know how to get back to yourself. It's like, when do I get back to myself? And I remember I was watching something the other day, and the person said that I think, was it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? It was a certain amount of time of just actually like sitting still, right? No cell phone, no TV, just sitting still and just hear how much noise you have in your head. And it had me thinking, like, it's true. Like sometimes I could be sitting down and it's just like, shit, was that my phone? You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, it wasn't your phone, but it's just like, you
start hearing sounds.
Yeah, you start hearing shit like,
you're like, somebody at my door.
Yeah, like that's it. That happened. It's like, did somebody at my door or something? But it's just like, we're so used to that. Even the silence could almost like, why is it so silent? You know, but even in our heads, like, it's not even silent. It could be silent, but in our heads, we're thinking about so many different things. And so it's, I just say that to say that it sounds like a simple phrase, right? But it's just not. And it's something that I think you have to work towards, you have to be conscious of, in order to do it. And I challenge people out there, like, really, like, sit down and see how can you actually be free for a moment. And that's why I respect people that, you know, they wake up in the morning and they're like, they don't look at their phone. That's not like the first thing that they're looking at. You know, like they get something to eat. Like they go do something, you know, for themselves, whether it's working out or whatever. Like, they just don't immediately jump on the phone. And it just had me thinking, like, yeah, I'm probably one of those people that just like, you roll over and then it's just like, let me check my phone real quick, right? But then you realize, like, damn, I'm actually doing that a lot. Like, that's not healthy per se. You know what I mean? Where, like, that's the first thing you see when you wake up. That's the last thing you see when you go to bed. That's not a good thing, right? And so being conscious, I think, is definitely important. And so you got to have certain reminders, i.e. tattoos, or, you know, some people put notes, you know, posted somewhere around, you know, so that way they could, because we are so distracted. And so we could really kind of get away from that. So I definitely understand, you know, where you come from with that. And that's pretty dope. I think I covered much of a lot. Was there anything I'm missing? Was there anything you wanted to share?
I don't know. What you want to talk about? I'm here. You got me here. And it's Friday. It's raining outside. Like, yeah, the weather's starting to decline here in Dallas. So what you want to talk about?
Being indoors is the best thing.
We can talk about life. We can talk about what you got. Come on.
Whatever it's gonna be. I mean, in terms of, I guess what I always try to ask people is just, you know, how they kind of get to who they are, right? Like, because we all go through different things in life, and good, bad, that's how we learn. That's how we become who we are right now. And we continue to grow. What are some like significant moments that's happened in your life where you're like, okay, I learned from that, you know, and that's made me be who I am today? Like, any of those moments that you could think back to, like, yeah, that was a crazy moment, or that was a bad experience, or that was a great experience, that changed my mind on just the way I view things.
So I actually don't think there's been just one like pinpoint that pivotal where I could say, hey, this was this moment. Like, this was this enlightening like moment where I figured out life or understood things. I kind of just look at my life as a whole, because I feel like every day, whoever we come in contact with, whoever we talk to, there's someone who's kind of shifted, or someone who's taught us something. Like, I've learned lessons from homeless people who have told me things that they've read in the Bible and books before. So it's you know, it's just about that over encompassing thing. And I think for me, you know, both my parents were drug addicts, and my mom, I think she was like 3 or 4 months before she even found out she was pregnant with me. And my dad was getting ready to move to a whole other state. And, you know, ironically, like, my dad was also her drug dealer. And he was like, nah, I'm about to be out. And he ended up staying around. And then they got married when I was 1. But they had been like together for like 7 years at that point. And she kind of just went AWOL and dipped, like, just left. And he was just like, all right, I still got to do what I got to do. And so we moved to Nashville, and, you know, of course, broke 10 crack commandments, you know, and he dipped in his own supply. So it got to the point where, you know, my grandma was having to come find me in drug houses, or she would get a call from the babysitter and be like, yo, I haven't seen Juan in days. You know, I've had Brittany, but I mean, she's got to school, she's gotten fed, she's got these other things, but we don't know where that is at. So we had to move back to Indiana. And, you know, at that age, I really didn't understand what was going on, right? Like, I'm like, yes, I get to move with my grandma. Like, it's lit. Like, grandma's house. Because, I mean, grandma always came, like, showering gifts. And, I'm going to take you to do this. I'm going to take you to that. And then I think it's when I got older, I realized, like, yo, you did, like, I didn't go without, but it's not because, like, that's really what you felt like, oh, I just want to shower with these things. You felt like you had to do them because I didn't have, like, those parents around. And even, like, my dad was in and out a lot. He's been clean now for 18 years.
That's awesome. And congrats to him.
Yeah, he just celebrated 18 years this summer, you know, and he's like, he had a liver transplant my freshman year in high school because he just had a really bad liver. He died on the operating table twice. Like, it was just kind of all those type of things that, because we didn't even have a really good relationship until I went to college, you know, because by the time he got clean, it was like, bro, I don't have to listen to you. You've been in and out. Like, he was always about, like, schoolwork and academics because I took, you know, accelerated classes and I was in the dance team and I was in indoor track and all these things. But it was still like, you're not a parent. You're not like, he drained my bank account when I was younger. He used to tell me all the time, like, well, unless you give me $20, unless you give me this or you do this, like, I'll spend time with you or I won't spend time with you. Like, crazy things that, you know, you're like, yo, I'm a child. And so, of course, like, growing up then, like, with complexes, because he was also, like, emotionally and verbally kind of abusive. So he would say things to me in his head, like, we talked about it. When did we talk about it? We actually talked about it over the summer. And he finally said, he was like, he was not the dad that I deserved, but he was the dad that I needed. Because he was like, you wouldn't be who you are. And certain things wouldn't phase you. Like, certain things, like how you're just like, okay, shit, it's life. Keep going. Like, and I'm like, bro, but do you know how damaging that is? Because especially, I think, even as Black women, we're taught, like, everything will be okay. Like, don't be upset about things or push things under the rug when something shouldn't be, right? And we kind of had it out for a while. And I'm just like, bro, like, you can't turn your head to certain things, like, and say that was okay or you feel okay with it. And I mean, of course, now, like, you know, me and my dad have gotten close over the years, and he's probably like I hate to admit this shit, so Dad, if don't ever watch this, but he's dead ass like my biggest supporter. And I think he also, yeah, but I'd be like, nah, Juan, I don't like you. Stop. I'd be like, hey,
you still giving him a hard time.
Yeah, no, I'm always gonna give Juan a hard time, right? And he'll like, when other people will ask, be like, oh, how's Brittany? How this? Because we grew up in a small town and mostly everybody's still there. So, you know, I left and went to college, like didn't come back, you know, to Terre Haute, didn't do any of those things. And people were like, oh, how's your daughter? And he's just like, she might be in the country right now. She might not be. I don't know. Like, but he's very good at also knowing mentally where I stand. And he'll say like, hey, I haven't heard from you this week. Are you good? Like, or I'll tell him like, hey, you're not going to hear from me for about, you know, the next 3 days because I have 3 clients I'm taking through implementation. I got 30 things to do. I'll send you a thumbs up to tell you I'm alive. Like, I'm good. I've ate. I could drink some water today. Like, I'm straight. But, you know, he'll also tell my family that, like, don't call Brittany. Don't ask her for nothing. Don't just kind of just leave her alone. So I think when I take like all of that and put it together, and when I was moving to Chicago after I not after I graduated, but after I left Kentucky, and I was moving there, the day I was driving, I was like, yo, God, let's talk about this. Because I have a habit of talking to God while I'm driving. Like, turn off the music. That's just like, hey, bro. And I talk to God like he's somebody's uncle sitting next to the grill with like a shoe, right? Like, laughing at people, like telling stories. I look at him like he has like silver gray hair. That's just how I look at it. And I was like, hey, so I feel like Chicago is going to be a pivotal point in my life. So whatever's going on, I don't want to be here more than 2 years. I don't know why I picked 2 years. It's just what I asked for. So when things kind of started going awry and turmoil, like with the job I was having, because I was in 24 time zones, like working all the time. My friends weren't seeing me. I was losing weight. My hair was falling back, like out. I had a panic attack while driving, like crazy things. And it was right when it was like my last 6 months, and I was fighting it. Like, I'm staying in Chicago. I am not leaving. I am staying. I have my friends here. I have people I love here. Like, this is comfort. I love my apartment. Like, my place is dope. Like, I have a beer pong room. I'm not going nowhere. Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm good. And God was like, LOL, you're funny. But yes, you are. Like, and that's how I got to Dallas, because it was more so, it wasn't about me. So I got to Chicago in April of 2014, and I left March 2016.
Oh, wow.
Right at 2 years.
You asked for it.
I did. And it's the craziest thing.
Why Dallas, though?
So actually, Dallas was because, so Jeff was living here.
Jeff was out here.
Yeah. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to apply, see what happens. And I applied, and again, it just happened. Like, again, they hired me without seeing me and was like, hey, can you be here in 2 weeks? I was like, 2 weeks from when? They were like, no, 2 weeks from today. I was like, can you give me 3? And I got, basically, if I couldn't fit it in my car, or it wasn't things that were sentimental, I could go take over to my dad's house, because he lived like 3 hours outside of Chicago. I didn't take it. So I got rid of couches. I got rid of pots and pans. I got rid of, like, I donated like my bed and some of my furniture to like a center for battered women. I just told people to come get it. And everything I could just fit in my car, I put it in, and I drove 16 hours to Dallas.
Wow. That's dope. How you enjoy Dallas though so far?
My first 6 months here, I was like, hell no, I'm going back to Chicago. Like,
it's a different vibe.
I was like, nah, this isn't it. And I was in and out, like, actually the first 3 weeks here, I bought a flight and went back to Chicago. It's like, yo, I miss my friends. Like, I want to see them, and I want to be back. And then when I stepped off the plane, because stupidly, I didn't take a coat with me. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. Didn't take a coat, and the minute I got off the plane, I was like, hell nah. Like, I was like, I can't do this no more. I was like, take me back. So, and then, you know, over the summer, like, I was in and out of a lot, and then I finally decided, I was like, nah, I'm just gonna sit. I'm just gonna actually enjoy it. So now, actually, like, I feel like, you know, it's been a little over 2.5 years. Like, I'm a Texan, and I don't have any plans. So
has your dad come to visit you out here? Or?
He has. He's came a couple times. My great grandma passed a few months ago, and she lived in Texarkana. Yeah, she was 100.
Oh,
she was
God
like,
no, yeah, she
was like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, she did a thing. She stayed around a little bit too long.
Yeah, no. Every time I talked to her, she was like, well, today wasn't the day. Yeah. I'm like, who says this, bro? Like,
I feel it though, man.
Yeah,
100 is a long time.
A long time. Bro. She was ready. She was just like, I've seen. She was like, I've seen too much. So he came. Like, I took him to Fuel City. Took him around. Like, so he was just like, yo, it's 110 though. I'm done. He was like, can we go back in the air? Like, he wasn't even trying to walk out to his car. So he bought golf clubs. Like, yeah, I'm about to golf. And he's like, actually, no, I'm staying in the house. So he was like, can you turn your air conditioning up, actually, because this isn't right. So, you know, he likes it, but for him, he's more so, as long as I'm happy, he's like, I don't care where you go, just as long as you're happy, as long as you're safe. So,
no, I think that's dope. It's interesting you said like him being like your biggest supporter. I think that's it's always important to have obviously both parents supporting you, but like, for example, you know, as a woman, that male energy, that's like your first experience, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, you know, for guys, your relationship with your mom, that's your first experience, you know, with a woman, you know, where it's just like it almost has to be positive, because you're going to carry those experiences over to when you're interacting with other people. And so, do you feel like once things started to get like, well, he started to get himself together, and relationship obviously started to probably get closer, right? Because there's some trust that probably was rebuilt, being that he was, you know, doing things right for himself. Do you feel like that did impact you to where like your relationship with men, or like particularly guys, like did that change at all? Was it just always the same old? She's giving me a look right now. I think it's a good question.
No, it's an honest question. It's a fair question, right? And it's a very honest. Let me give you an honest answer. Chest. So I think where my dad tried to instill with me kind of backfired a little bit, because he was very much like, even he was present, but, you know, he wasn't always present. And I think his biggest thing was, I never want you to be the type of woman that depends on anyone, let alone a man, right? Because my dad to this day has never gotten married. He's had several girlfriends at one time. Like, I've seen it all. And he's just always been like, yo, don't ever let a man treat you like I treat other women. Like, and it's just wild that I'm like, well, bro, why don't you treat them better? That's somebody's daughter. And he's just like, I don't have to. So don't find somebody like me. And so I'm just like, all right, you know, sometimes I lean more towards like a male dominant personality. Like, all right, you ain't gonna do it, I'll do it myself. Like,
you gotta protect yourself.
Yeah. It's like, I got you. Like, I don't need you. And I think when I was younger, that kind of, I was trying to fight that so much, where, you know, cause I was in a relationship in college, like, and right outside of college. And it was so, cause I felt like, yes, like, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to be that person. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? Fuck this. This is not working. And, you know, for me, it's just been one of those things where it's gotta, when I get into actual relationships and it's like there, like, I'm such like oh, let me cook dinner, or yep, do your laundry, fold, but it's kind of like that working up to it. I have to feel comfortable enough with somebody to say, if these are the things like I want to do, I have to kind of feel that like it's a right time and it's a right moment. Like, I hate when people ask me, like, oh, do you know how to cook? Do you know how to cook? It's a life skill. Do you know how to do laundry? Do you know how to do things? Like, what? Like, why is that? Why are you equating to my worth to if I can cook, if I can clean, if I can do all these things? Like, those should be bonuses. You should just like me because you think I'm dope, if nothing else. Like, you respect my work, you respect what I do. And it's just like, yeah, she is who she is, but then she can do all this other stuff that's just like cherry on the cake. But, you know, I'm honest, like, I had a guy tell me one time, he's like, you don't have a soul. I swear you don't. Because it's not even me trying to be heartless. It's just, he's like, you're just not fazed by things. And you're just you're like, all right, whatever. And you're like, all right, do you? And I just keep it moving. So it's, you know, it's made it difficult at times. But then again, the times like I am in a relationship and those things, you know, are going down. And as far as how I look at things, you know, I've tried to take a step back. And now that, again, about to be 30.
Reflect.
Yeah, and try to be better. Like, trying to learn, you know.
So your mom, she never came back?
She did.
She did? Okay.
She did. I actually just, like, when me and my dad had that really long talk over the summer, and it was kind of regards to her. And, you know, he was just like, yeah. He was like, well, you know, she never tried to really come see you when we lived in Nashville. We were there for like 6-7 years. And I didn't see my mom again until I was like 7 or 8. And I didn't know who she was. So I was like, who's this? And I even asked him, I'm like, so I didn't ask about having a mom, because I felt like that was something a normal child, especially me, who would ask questions, would ask. And he was like, no. He's like, I just told you that, you know how some parents have one mom, you just have a dad. And he's like, you just rocked with it because we were so close. And that's all I knew. Like, he took me every Saturday. We went and bought sneakers. And he would buy me whatever he bought him. He would buy me a matching pair. I had a gold chain like my dad. I had, you know, a little like bike plate that said Juan's daughter. He bought me like, you know, I had a Barbie car because he had a Corvette. So I had a pink Barbie car. Like, it was just, I'm his twin, so I looked just like him. So that's all I knew. And then when I got older, and it was kind of that like relationship with my mom, like, she used to tell me she would come to get me and never show up. And I would stay like sitting like in, because my grandma had this big window. And I used to stay like sitting outside and just looking out like, yo, she's coming. And she would just never come. And then my dad was always like, we have to deal kind of with the aftermath of that. So that's when he just told my mom, you can't see her at all. So it wasn't until like I got in my teenage years where it was like that somewhat of a relationship. And then when I got into college, it kind of just fell apart again because she kind of let some outside things happen. And for her as a mom, I'm like, there's things you can do and there's things you shouldn't do. And you put me in a situation where I didn't feel safe. And so, I got blamed for it. So we stopped talking. Like, that was my senior year in high school. I didn't talk to my mom again until I want to say really 24.
Wow.
Actually, I think it was longer because I was living in Chicago. So at this point, I think I was 26. So I really didn't talk to her until I was 26. And then even to this day, like we'll talk every once in a while, but it's still kind of one of those things where you have to know, again, your mental health and you have to protect your peace. So it's like, hey, I can love you from a distance and that's okay. But I can't have you like actively in my life because I know how that makes me feel. And that's a big thing. Like my dad's been also he'll step in at any time and he'll be like, yo, don't talk to her. Don't say nothing to her. Like, it's just not what we're doing. And my family is like the same way too. They're very much like, hey, disengage with her. Like she's good. Like, you know, so, you know, I did miss certain points in my life. Like when people start to look at prom dresses and they start doing different things like, yo, like these are things I should do with my mom. And I even, you know, asked myself one day, if I were ever to get married, like what role would she play in that? Right. Yeah. Like would I have her there? Would she do certain things? And I was like, nah, like I got my dad. I'm good. So I can see like where the positive and negative effects, especially like trying to be a woman and figuring out and navigating things in myself and relationships and all of that have probably failed because I only knew one way and the ways that I knew probably weren't the best. So it's come with growth and it's come with saying, I don't want to be that person or this is not who I want to be, but what can I do to control what I can control? And that's just every day trying to be a better version of who I was the day before.
No, that's awesome. It's great that you're able to turn that around, right? And use it and recognize it because let's just be honest, most people going through that same thing, they don't usually end up on the other side. You know, they go down a different life because those things can damage them so much where they really just can't break out of that or work through it. And I don't know if you caught, because this just happened yesterday, so you probably are aware of it because people are tweeting and memes and a bunch of stuff. Did you catch like the interview? I don't know if you call it interview, but with Kanye West and President Trump. Like, did you hear any snippets? Did you watch it though? Not snippets, because I don't want to get to snippets. Because it's when people just take little things. Did you look at it at all?
So when I lived in Chicago, I used to volunteer for Donda's house, and of course, loved Kanye, loved his music, like everything. I still have, you know, his albums on vinyl. And I feel like he has a different responsibility than some people. And I just can't do it. I just can't. Like, I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to tweet about it. I don't want to give it any attention at all.
Here's why I bring it up. Because there was a lot that was said, and you know, there's gonna be some things people agree with, some things people disagree with.
I have no idea what he actually said.
Okay, so here's why I bring it up, because there was one thing that he did say, and he was talking from himself, right? Or not really from himself, because I know his mom. He was with his mom. I know his father's actually still alive, so I know his father's around. So I know he probably wasn't talking so much about himself, but he did talk about like in the household, right, and how growing up, you know, people who don't have their fathers around and how that can kind of make you a bit more, you miss out on certain things. Just let's say that. Like he was talking about how like that happened a lot in certain neighborhoods, and that's why kids grow up and they end up doing the things that they're doing, which makes sense, right? I don't think there's much of a dispute around that. I think that makes sense. But I bring it up just to say like people didn't consider something even like that, with him being the one who said it, as it being like it kind of went over people's heads. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, like, I can understand. I grew up in a household with two parents, right? But even though they were there, I still felt like I didn't get what I was supposed to get from my father. And here's what I mean. It's one of those scenarios where you could be around and not really be around. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not even enough to be like, okay, they're in the house. Because they could get up, go to work, you go to school, you come back, they're asleep. You just don't even see each other for the most part, but they're there, right? As opposed to actually raising you or actually teaching you certain things. And what I got from that, it was just like, the disadvantage that we have is that because we're not taught certain things by the people that brought us here, how it could be damaging going forward. And I just feel like that still goes on today, and nobody really like acknowledges that. Like, it just goes over their heads. Like we talk more about like violence and again, those things need to, you talked about mental health. Those topics need to be explored for sure. But like, if you go all the way back like if you go to like the root of certain things, right? I feel like it starts there, right? Like when you don't have that cohesiveness in the household, it can go one way or the other, but it just tends to go far right, in most cases. Not all, because people,
right.
LeBron James, his father was there, he's a basketball player, he's done very well for himself. So it's not all the way, all 100% the case. But like, I just feel like, why don't we focus on that? Why don't we get back to that, to like saying, okay, we need to try to fix that? Because I think if we fix that, some of the other stuff, the results of that can be different. Even a Kanye West, for example, I think his outlook would be different if he grew up in a situation that was that tight. Because from what he said is like he didn't have that male energy. That's what he said.
Yeah. I think that's, in some retrospect fair for people to say that and to be able to say, well, I didn't have a dad or I didn't have this parent around or something didn't happen, right? And I've said this before to somebody that we're really only 5-6 generations out from being products of rape. So when we think about how we're brought into this world and how our lineage has happened, it's passed through our DNA. It's been very violent. And if that's where the core is. So I do think now that, because again, I would say this is maybe one of the things that has came out of social media and has came out of this big tech boom is this focus on mental health and physical health and where people are feeling okay to go talk to a therapist. Like when I told my family I was 12 and was like, I need to talk to somebody, they were like, we'll just pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, like that's not what I needed. So then when I got older and I was like, well, if y'all didn't take me, I'm going to take myself.
Right.
And I think now that we're making it more comfortable where we can fix some of those things, because a lot of times we can't go back and fix that core, right? We can't go back and say, well, if I had these things as a parent, we can only deal with what we're given. And it's like, do you want to take that and do you want to make it your ceiling, or you want to make it your floor and be able to stand on the shit and say, okay, I can walk over it. So we really have to look at what we're given and say, okay, if we know that's not what we want to do anymore, what are we going to do to better that situation? So I know that, God forbid, if I do get a divorce or that, something happens, that I'm still doing my part into like fixing, what I can as myself. I think if everybody just started kind of with themselves, like, and looking at like where they are with their health and their spirituality and everything, like that might cure some of the problems. But, it's just a cycle right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And I just bring it up because it's almost like when you focus on the symptom versus the problem.
Right.
I feel like a lot of times we tend to focus on the symptom, like, here's the result, let's focus on the result. But then it's like, until you can, like, that's going to keep happening until we kind of find like, okay, well, what's the actual cause? Like, This is just the effect. And it's like, we're trying to control the effect. But it's like, what happened before that even became the case, where that person felt like they needed to, speak to someone, or even they don't decide to speak to someone and they just act on their inhibitions or things, and then they go out and they do negative things, crime or whatever. But it still goes back to their frame of mind and their upbringing. So I just thought it was him bringing it up. I felt like, damn, like, why he had to bring it up, because I knew it was an important topic, but I knew a lot of people wouldn't care less because of who's saying it. You get what I'm saying? Like, how
I don't think it's something that hasn't been said before, though. I would honestly have to go listen to it, and it would pain me, like literally pain me to go do it. But I think in order to like understand what he was saying, I would have to go listen to it, because I feel like we've talked about this issue for years of fathers not being in the home and people missing that male presence. And we know what type of effect it is, especially I used to volunteer in Southside Chicago on 79th and Jeffrey. So on O Block, I know like the conversation these kids have and the things about having that lack of parental guidance and things, or when it's, they're walking to school and they see their dad on the corner, like being strung out, or they see their mom in the streets, like selling some ass to get some groceries. Like, these kids are faced with that and they see it in their face every day. So I think the conversation has been around, but it's, what are we doing to actually solve it?
Yeah, he kind of, just to again, because I know you didn't see it. So, but just to kind of answer your question, and maybe you'll hear about it or not, but he kind of tied it into the fact of like people not having jobs.
Yeah, there's no resources.
You know, there's reasons, and also like people depending on the government, you know, and not feeling like they need to have a man or whoever else in the household because they can get Section 8 or they can get welfare, they can get this. So it's like, I don't need to be with anybody else. Where if we go way back in the day and we eliminate welfare and everything else, it was almost understood that, okay, if a guy and a woman, they come together so that way they can be as one and that way they can manage their household, right? Where now it's like, okay, imagine if you don't, again, and I'm not saying anyone needs, but I'm just, if the government is going to say to you, hey, we'll give you money for this kid, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, most people are going to say, well, okay, then I don't really need to be in a relationship with anybody. You know, like that mindset is what's permeating over a long period of time, which is why he's like saying, okay, if that's the issue, why maybe we need to figure out like getting jobs back and getting these communities clicking to where it's like, okay, we can do for ourselves to where like we don't need to depend on the government or other resources and just kind of depend on ourselves so that way we can have a functional relationship with each other. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just, to a certain extent, I just don't think I can, like me personally, I can agree just because it wasn't, I don't think it was a matter of issue of, well, we don't need the men in the household, we don't need this, we don't need that. It was more so, you know, the government was saying, well, if you have a man in the household or if he does these things, like, so we can only live in certain areas, and you can only, if they find out that your man is living here, your food stamps gone, things are gone. So it's a systematic thing. So maybe it's not even taking away some of that support, but I do agree that, you know, the lack of resources in certain areas has made it difficult for people, the lack of jobs, the lack of things. So when you start pulling the schools and you close down the schools, the kids aren't getting educations. So how can they get up and get jobs? So their thing is to go hustle. Like a lot of these people, they've never left Chicago. So when you talk about all the drugs, you talk about the guns, where are they getting them from? Like, so like right now, there was just a thing where the DEA was buffing up interference in Chicago because they heard like Colombian coke coming in the city. These people, they don't own planes, they don't own these things. So if you go back and look at the history of Chicago and the way like the mobs and everything, it's from the government. Yeah,
I've always said that.
So like, it's so everything. Yes, can we take responsibility in some things? Yes. Do I think it comes down to, especially right now where we're at and we're more aware of the things going on and how to prevent, you know, having children, all that. Yeah, absolutely. But I do say things, it's not as easy as just, okay, we're going to click and fix it, or we're going to take over welfare, or that's that. I would honestly have to listen to what Kanye said as much as I could. Because right now, I just, it would pain me, like it would literally hurt my chest.
I got you. I get you. If you do, always, you know, we'll chat about it. Yeah,
we'll talk about it. We can argue off. We can argue off the mic.
We'll chat about it. But no, I appreciate you coming out. Before we wrap this up, please tell everyone where to find you. Hit them with your social media. Tell us all of that. Where can we find you?
In these streets. No, kidding. Actually, no, I'm actually not kidding. I'm like, please, somewhere out doing something. Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at @TheBrittanyB_. My website is www.thebrittanyb.com. I take all emails, DMs. I answer everybody's questions, whether it's simple as, yo, I'm trying to get this new job, can you help, all the way down to, hey, I'm trying to start a blog. Like, I sit down with people all the time and talk to them, like one-offs. I take them to coffee shops, be like, yo, let's talk. I can't do that for everybody, y'all. But I do it for a lot of people. So I'm literally here as a resource because I very much fully believe whatever talent that God's given me, like, I'm supposed to give it out. Like, I'm supposed to take it, flip it, and bring it back. So, yeah, I'm just here.
That's dope. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, especially in your house.
Yes.
This is nice.
Yes, no, I appreciate it.
You let me in your house. Like, I could have robbed you. You don't know.
No, I got a couple guns lying around.
Good to know.
No, we're good. We're good. I appreciate you coming through, guys. Please make sure you follow Brittany. Please make sure you leave a comment on this video if you're watching it. If you're listening to it on iTunes, please feel free to leave a rating. It does help the show. Hit that like button. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that way you could be notified of more podcasts on the way. Thank you to my lovely guests. Guys, peace and love. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.